Last, but definitely not least, is People Not Things. Poignant and moving, this debut collection of poetry from Genesis B bravely examines what it means to stay hopeful on the arduous journey to freedom. Drawing on her activism and anti racist work as covered by the New York Times and Vice, B examines tools of division and challenges our notion of freedom in an effort to combat racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia. The poems in People Not Things are amplified by Genesis's original artwork. Both her art and poems work together to expand upon the themes of race, sexuality, and identity throughout the collection. Genesis B offers a strikingly honest yet hopeful snapshot of her journey as a queer black woman in America fighting for the humanity of her community. Equal parts delicate and unapologetic, People Not Things is a powerful debut that will speak to the hearts of readers from all walks of life.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write this book?
So a little bit about me. I was raised in Mississippi to two loving parents. My mama is what society would deem white. My daddy is what society would deem black. But they raised me to be a loving human being and a decent human being. And yeah, we were raised Muslim, a very beautiful path, a golden path that has led me to a lot of my activism work, and a lot of my creative work is birthed through my learnings about compassion and empathy through an Islamic lens, and a lens of a very multi-racial, multi-spiritual, multi-religious family, along with my two big brothers. But yeah, I do music, I do poetry and painting, and it's all to share a message of love and connection and people, not things.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work as a writer and as a painter?
Sure. As a writer, I started writing pretty young, like I was like third, second grade, maybe younger. My father and my mother taught us all how to read very, very early. And so I started writing early, and I was exposed to a lot in my household. Like, my father is very social justice oriented because he grew up in Mississippi during, a time where his humanity was deemed limited by the power around him, right? Whether it was law enforcement or this, that, and the other. And his father was a civil rights activist, my grandfather, Reverend Clyde Briggs. So I grew up in this atmosphere where my father was having us bear witness to different atrocities that were happening around the world or that have happened at a very young age. Things that I couldn't even wrap my head around, but it was important for us to see this, he thought, right? And it took us to a KKK rally when I was like 5 or 6, I remember.
Wow.
Lots of History Channel, reading up and learning about different conflicts and how humans can treat each other, like the potential of what humans are willing to do to each other for power and resources and this, that, and the other. So that was something that I began processing at a very young age, and writing was my way of my young mind trying to process these things, because usually the two don't go together, with youthful innocence and the realities of what humanity does to itself.
Yeah.
So my way of reconciling that and understanding was writing, and I started writing poetry at a very, very young age. I didn't start painting until much later in life. So I started very early with poetry, went into music, stayed in music for like 20 years. And then in 2016, after I did my protest, I did a protest against Confederate History Month that turned into a protest about the Mississippi state flag holding the Confederate emblem in it. But after that protest, immediately I started to paint. I'd get into that maybe later, but that's when I first picked up a paintbrush, was 2016. So not too long ago. And so I'm still I still consider myself an amateur of the craft, and I'm learning the craft as I go.
Which
Yeah.
section of the book do you think is your favorite and why?
Barriers to love is absolutely my favorite because it is the most important barrier to overcome. If you can overcome the barrier to love, more specifically, the barrier to self-love, all of the other barriers can eventually be broken down easier, right? The barrier of fear, barrier of control, barrier of communication. Those barriers only are able to exist because we're unable to love ourselves. We're unable to love what's around us, truly, and so when I say self-love, I don't mean like, oh, I go in the mirror and I say my affirmations every day. No, I mean, am I able to forgive myself when I make mistakes? Do I rerun my mistakes in my head? Do I have negative self-talk along with these mistakes that are rerun in my head? People Not Things is a call to unlearn the programming that teaches us that we're not enough, that that person is not enough, right? Because they're Black, gay, straight, trans, rich, poor, right? Because we got some thoughts about rich people too,
Yeah.
no matter what the label is. Now, people, not things. Like, learn to see people as complex human beings worthy of dignity first. And in order to do that, you got to see yourself as a complex human being worthy of dignity first and foremost. So that's why barrier to love is my absolute favorite, because it is the most important. And if on a collective scale we can all do this, we will see a drop in war. We will see a drop in exploitation. We'll see a drop in addictions and violence, personal violence. That's my true belief.
All right. So before I let you go, Genesis, would you mind reading the closing piece to People Not Things, a love poem for humanity for us?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
A love poem for humanity. You are hard to love. You are hard to trust. But I love you and I trust that you have a greater purpose than what you've shown. You broke my heart more than once. I was 5 years old the very first time. Peeking around the corner at the screen my papa was watching, I saw skinny men that looked like living ghosts and little babies that slept as ashes. I saw for the first time how you eat yourself alive: greed, possession, power, pain, hatred, trauma, projection, blame. Still, the immensity of my love for you expands way beyond my understanding. That gleam in a curious child's eye, that slight smile right before you cry, as to say, don't worry, I'll be okay. I feel like things are getting better. I try to convince myself that you are not as bad as the news says, as history shows. Besides, when it comes to you, negativity glows. With all your innovations in medicine, engineering, technology, you have the ability to do better. Papa says, be careful not to fall in love with potential. Love people for who they are, not what you wish them to be. Same for you, I suppose.
Awesome. Round of applause, round of applause. Well, we are very excited. People Not Things coming this fall. Can't wait to get it in bookstores. Yes. Get that message out there.